Hey guys, this is your host Nitin Binhani and a very warm welcome to my startup podcast channel Jazair Audio, where we share real stories with real learnings. One of the fundamental traps that most early stage startups fall into is when they try to build an all-in-one solution for their users or a particular market. In fact, Patrick Lee, the founder and CEO of Rotten Tomatoes, says one of the biggest reasons why startups fail is that they are all trying to do too much and not really focusing on one thing. If you notice, most successful startups really started off with a strict core focus, that is solving one problem with one solution of a particular market. So in today's podcast, we will cover why startups should remain focused, especially at the early stages. We'll talk about two contrast case studies and how founders can really expand when they attain the leadership position in a particular market. My today's guest is Rachita Kumar. Rachita currently works at Madison, India, a growth stage private equity firm. Previously, she was a part of public market investment team at Premji Invest. Besides, she also runs a community called FutureX, where she writes about the startup industry trends. So, let's welcome today's special guest. Hey Rachita, welcome to Jazair Audio and thank you for talking to us.
Hey, hi Nitin. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with, why should startups really remain focused, especially during the early stage journey?
Sure, definitely. So, in my few years of investing experience, what I've observed is that what separates the market leaders and the top performing companies is sharp focus on their core value proposition. So, what I mean by that is that you know the target customers you will be selling to, you know what need would you be solving for them, and then laser sharp focus on how would you be doing that. So in fact, I was reading a blog recently and I came across a line by Paul Buchai, who was the creator of Gmail, and he said it's better to make a few people really happy than to make a lot of people semi-happy. And I think the best way to do that is actually solving the core need of your customers, and that will of course be achieved by focus only.
Okay, can you share two contrasting case studies, one where a startup has drifted away from its core focus, while another startup which has remained focused and has benefited immensely?
So before I move on to the startup ecosystem, I think I can take an example which our audiences will relate to. Everybody, in fact. So taking the example of maybe Domino's, Starbucks or McDonald's. If I say these three names and ask you that what comes to your mind first, I'm sure that there would not be any two answers about Domino's, right? It's obviously pizzas. So what has helped them get this brand recall is the focus, what we just talked about.
Sure.
So now if I move on to the startup ecosystem and let's take the fintech industry. Two contrasting approaches I can talk about on how these two startups have probably focused on their core value proposition. So let's take Paytm. So Paytm was one of the key beneficiaries of demonetization, and I would say it was among the pioneers of digitization. It got a lot of people online. It helped them make payments. It, through this business, established leadership in the wallets business, right? But over the years, I observed that it expanded into non-adjacent businesses. And now if you open the Paytm app, you see there is the Paytm Mall, it's e-commerce arm. There is Paytm Games. You'll also see it's mutual fund and wealth management business. So now when I say Paytm, what earlier used to be Paytm Karo, now I'm a bit confused on what should I actually do on the Paytm app, right? There is no one core value proposition that will come to my mind. So I think they have slightly drifted in their approach, not to take away the formidable business they've created in their wallets, and now they're focusing on UPI as well. But I think they expanded a little too bit into non-adjacent business lines. And probably now contrasting their approach with another fintech company, I'd say let's take Razorpay, which is a payment gateway company. So now payment gateway, a lot of people said is a commoditized business. But despite that, Razorpay created a solid product. And now if you see almost every D2C company that's coming online, especially now because of COVID, one thing which is common amongst most of them is that they're using the Razorpay payment gateway. And now I'm not saying that Razorpay didn't expand into other segments. Now they're doing lending, they're doing payouts, they're creating Razorpay X, which is a neobank. But they did that first by focusing on their core payment gateway business and then expanding into all these adjacent product lines. But their messaging remains clear, at least to me.
Awesome. Finally, how should startups really expand while continue to follow their core focus?
Sure, no, that's a great question. So I'd like to go back to my food brands analogy over here.
Yeah.
So now when we look at Domino's menus, it doesn't only sell pizza, right? You will see garlic bread, calzones, pasta, and a lot of these other products.
Yeah.
But they did start all these product lines on day one itself. Only when they were confident that they would be able to, that pizza remain their core value proposition and these other products are to increase the customer's wallet share. This is what their messaging has remained since always. And this is something that probably startups can look to when they think about expansion.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is, and I think actually one thing that comes to my mind when I think about expansion is that startups shouldn't have a leaky bucket in their core product. What I mean by that is, these days a lot of companies are spending too much into customer acquisition.
Yeah.
But if you aren't able to monetize and retain those customers, it means you have an initial leaky bucket. So once you solve for that and you think that the core business can run in a way on an autopilot with lesser interventions, that's when companies can probably think about expansion. And I'll just taking an example over here. So Freshworks, an Indian SaaS company, which initially started as Freshdesk, which was their core CRM product. And now they are into a whole lot of other businesses. They have a suite of SaaS products into HR management, IT, marketing management, etc. But they expanded into these segments only when they had established a name for themselves in the CRM industry. So this is probably one way that startups can look at expanding into different product lines.
Great. So with this, we have reached at the end of this podcast. Rachita, it was a pleasure to have you on Desire Audio and thank you for sharing great insights with us.
Definitely, Nitin. Great speaking to you.
Lastly, I want to thank all the listeners who took their valuable time to listen to this podcast. Keep rocking, be safe, and don't forget to share.